Good morning, everyone. Oh, good morning, Agatha's family. You were waiting for us. Sweet. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another segment of Be an Explorer. If you came in through our Facebook or our YouTube page, you'll know that our topic today is bees, and we have a special guest, Dr. Amanda Bachmann of SDSU. She is the South Dakota State Urban Entomologist. Do I have your title right, Amanda?
Yep, I do urban entomology and also pesticide education for SDSU Extension.
Awesome. So before we get to Amanda, though, I am still going to start out our morning like we always do with a check of outside what's going on. You'll notice I'm inside today, and that's because I have the bee cam operational, and I'm going to just switch to the bee cam here. And the bee cam is for those of you who have watched us for a while. This is from my backyard. So I want you to run outside and do your normal cloud check, temperature check, and wind check. I've seen one bee this morning, and I don't know that I'll see a lot of bees, but there were birds. So get your shoes on and run outside real quick, and then come back and report out what you're seeing. Here, good morning, Scott's family. And yes, Scott's family sent me a message over the weekend. What did I explore this weekend? And it turned out to be bees, which is why we're talking about bees this morning, because I had some questions and I saw a lot of cool bees. What you're looking at is the bee cam while our regulars go outside and do the cloud and temperature and wind check. I'm inside today. I'm letting the outside be undisturbed. Hopefully we'll get some good birds and bees. Here in Pierre, I'm live streaming from Pierre. We have stratus clouds. We have movement in tree branches. So we have the twigs moving, we have the small branches moving, and we have some of the larger branches moving. So that's like a Beaufort scale of 3 to 4, somewhere in there. I'm not outside now, but I was outside a little bit ago, and then it was chilly. So I'm thinking it's probably around 15 degrees Celsius, somewhere in there. So Agatha's family is reporting clouds, grass, wet, 50, and then branches are moving. Yeah. This morning I woke up and I opened a window and I smelled the rain, and that was nice. So I'll come back. We'll go back and bring Amanda with us. So anyway, I'll take the bee cam out of the stream because I want to talk to Amanda. And first of all, Amanda, I introduced you as an entomologist.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about what that is and how you get to be one and how you got interested in being one.
So an entomologist is a person that studies insects. We also sort of umbrella out and study we get questions and stuff about all of the arthropods, so spiders, ticks, millipedes, centipedes, anything that's got an exoskeleton and jointed appendages. Those are things that I get questions about for the state of South Dakota. I will say one of the prerequisites for being an entomologist is having insect fashion. So I wore my my bee t-shirt this morning for you guys. But I actually got started with insects back officially in middle school. I participated in Science Olympiad when I lived in Pennsylvania, and I did that 8th grade through 12th grade, and insects was one of my first events. And so that really got me sort of hooked on it. But I'd always been interested in the outdoors since I was a kid. I would go fishing with my dad. We'd catch, grasshoppers, and I'd play with caterpillars. And It wasn't really until college, though, when I was applying to graduate school, that I realized that I could make a career out of insects. And so I went to grad school for entomology, got my PhD from Penn State. And when I was finishing up with that, I was applying for jobs, and South Dakota was hiring. And I got to move out here to Pierce, South Dakota to work for SDSU Extension. And so my day job is answering questions about the insects that people find around their homes or in their homes. So bees are one of the more fun parts of my job because a lot of people really like bees. I do answer questions about spiders. I've become a lot more of a spider evangelist, so we should totally do a spider stream at some point. I really love spiders a lot more. And then I also do pesticide safety as the other part of my job for SDSU. So I know a lot of folks don't really like a lot of insects, and so I do, which, I try to get them to like insects before they're trying to kill them. But sometimes you've got insects inside where they're not supposed to be, and so I talk about how to, safely and effectively manage those issues. But the most fun part of my job is getting to hang out with the cool critters like bees and doing some of the outreach in the different gardens, which is kind of on hold for the summer. So it's nice that we can do these virtual meetings.
Yeah. So yeah, you said your day job was to identify your arthropods. It's also to answer questions from your friends who send you things.
Yes.
Amanda, what's this? We post it on Facebook and tag her. So it's great to have an entomologist as a friend. And Scott's family is saying go SDSU. So you've got some Jackrabbit fans in the audience here. So I mentioned earlier that I was watching, and I'll just bring the bee cam back for a moment. I was in my backyard watching these bees doing my explorer journal, and I noticed there were just a bunch of bees. Now, the honeybee is sort of the rock star bee. Everybody knows the honeybee. Oh, and that's
Yeah.
Amanda's cat, everybody. That's Cleo. Uh, but there were a lot of other kinds of bees. And so I was like, I was able to figure out what some of them were, but could you tell us more about bees in general and about bees in South Dakota?
Yeah, so honeybees are definitely the bee that everybody thinks of when you say, "Oh, I saw a bee." We manage honeybees like livestock. I mean, so they're tiny little cows with wings, and we use them to pollinate our crops. So that means, we use them to move pollen from one flower to another so that we get fruit. So if you've got a vegetable garden and are growing, like beans or tomatoes or anything where you're eating like the fruit of the plant, you need bees. We've got some hives in town. I know there's some hobby beekeepers around. So that's sort of where our honeybees are coming from. We also have there are some wild honeybee colonies, around the Pier area. But honeybees aren't a native bee to the United States. They've definitely naturalized here, which means that they, came here actually hundreds of years ago. Europeans brought them on purpose. But they have found places outside that they can, live and make hives and survive from year to year. Sort of the next most common or popular bee are the bumblebees. And so those are the big, fat, fuzzy bees that you see right now flying around going to dandelions and some of the other early blooming flowers. So those bees are actually the queens. They survived the winter and now they are making their nest for this year. So honeybees and bumblebees are both social. They'll make a colony and have, daughters that are, working for them for the good of the hive. But then we also have a ton of what we call solitary bees. And actually, probably a lot of the bees on my t shirt are solitary bees. And these bees live by themselves and they'll make nests either in the ground or in hollow stems. And they'll be foraging at sort of very discrete times of year. So you're not going to see some of them for a very long period of time. And some of them also are very specific as far as what kinds of flowers that they'll visit. So there's a lot of diversity in the solitary bee population, whereas our bumblebees and our honeybees are more sort of generalist in their preferences. So they'll eat, everything on the buffet, whereas the solitary bees maybe only have one or two things that they're going to use to, feed their young. So you might see some things that flying around and you think, is that a bee or a wasp? Bees tend to be fuzzier. And there can also be a range of sizes. We've got some really small bees that are out there. And then, of course, our biggest ones are the bumblebees. So definitely as things start to flower more and when we get, sunny, warm days, go sit outside and just watch some of your flowers. Make sure that your shadow is away from the flowers so you don't scare the bees, but just sit there and see what's coming to the different blooms. And I think you'll be really amazed at the different shapes, sizes, and colors of bees that you have just here in your backyard and pier.
Wow, I didn't know that the bees we saw now were queens. I've seen two types of bumblebees, a Hunt's bumblebee and a two-spotted bumblebee, and I'm like super excited that those are queens. Do you have pictures or anything to show us of some of the other bees?
Yeah, so I've got a PowerPoint up here. And so the first picture, one of the things about being an entomologist, I do put insects on my face. So if you search the hashtag spacebug on Instagram or Twitter, you'll find other entomologists who do this too. But we just try to, kind of like normalize handling insects and understanding that really a lot of the insects out there are our friends or really, don't want to hurt us. So this is actually a Madagascar hissing cockroach, which is not native to the US and it's not a pollinator, but it makes a very good face bug candidate. But pollinator wise, we talked about our honeybees, our bumblebees, we talked about our solitary bees. There are some other insects out there that serve that role as well as for moving pollen from one flower to another, our butterflies, beetles, flies. But since we're talking about bees today, you can see this is one of, I want to say maybe the Hunt's bumble with that orange band on its abdomen. And so when we're doing insect identification, I mean, one of the things I always check in is that folks know the three segments of an insect. So you've got the head, you have the thorax, which is where the wings and the legs are attached, and then you've got the abdomen, which is sort of the back largest segment of the insect, and that's where the guts and the reproductive organs and stuff are housed. But just sort of knowing that basic anatomy will help you if you're looking at a field guide or a website that's telling you, okay, this has an orange stripe on its abdomen. So that's one of our cute fuzzy bumblebees. These are some longhorn bees, and so this was actually taken on a blanket flower outside of my house a couple years ago. But these bees are smaller than a honeybee, but they have really long antennae. So that's pretty much the easiest way to identify them. Another way to sort of find some of these native bees is in the evening, as it's cooling down and getting towards dusk. Some of the species, the male bees, will actually sleep in flowers. So you can check your squash flowers, blanket flowers, and if you see some little bee butts sticking out, you've got some nice little native bees that are hanging out, waiting for it to warm up. This is a squash flower. So if any of you folks are planting, zucchini or summer squash or pumpkins, anything that has, the big yellow squash flowers, check your flowers for squash bees. These are actually specialist bees, which means that they only like cucurbit flowers. And, they're what you need. Them sort of plus the bumblebees do a lot of the heavy lifting for making sure you've got a good zucchini harvest. But if you look in your flowers, especially the closed flowers, if you poke them, you might, hear them buzzing because the bees are just hanging out in there, just kind of taking a nap, waiting for the next round of flowers to open. But these bees look very similar to honeybees. They're about the same size, but they just have like a little bit more contrast on the abdomen between the yellow and the black stripes. So they're like, you might confuse them for a honeybee the first time you see them, but take a closer look and you'll see that they're really squash bees. This is also a bee, and you can see that it's taken, this is my wrist. It landed on me when I was doing a master gardener training a couple years ago. I really want to, make sure that folks understand that bees aren't out there to sting you. Especially honeybees, they can only sting once and then they die. So you really have to be, attacking their hive or really otherwise putting them in mortal peril for them to use that defense. A lot of our native bees are really very docile. So if there's a bee, buzzing around, if you just kind of stay calm, don't move, it's much more interested in the flowers than it is in you. And so I've definitely handled some different stinging insects before, and everyone's been chill. I'm also not allergic to bee stings, so that also makes a difference. And then we've got a bumble here. So this is one of the eastern bumblebees. It was a cool evening, and she just climbed onto my finger and hung out there for quite a while for a nice little photo shoot, and then did not want to leave. It was very adorable. So yeah, bumblebees. I really enjoy those. And then this is an example of one of the green metallic bees. This is actually a picture taken in the Badlands in one of the gumbo lilies. So really anywhere that you are, you can take a look at what's flowering and check the flowers to see what's visiting them. So this is one of our solitary bees, and it's not as fuzzy, but it is a very shiny green color. They're really very pretty. So those are just some of the different kinds of bees that are out there. And obviously, that's not an exhaustive list, but gives you an idea of some of the size variation and some of the color variation that we've got in South Dakota.
Wow. Um, you mentioned right now earlier, I'm really sort of fascinated by this, the queen bee. And how can, like, as we go later on in the summer, how can I tell the difference between a queen bee and just a regular bumblebee? Well, are the queen bees going to go in their nests and then it'll just be regular bumblebees, or how can I tell?
So it's really a size difference. So with bumblebees, the queen is the only one that will survive the winter of her hive. And so then every year she's got to rebuild her hive. The daughter bumblebees will be smaller than the queen. So sometimes you might not really be able to tell the difference unless you've got them like right next to each other. Um, Honeybees, though, the queen is going to stay in the hive. So honeybee colonies, they actually all of the members, or hopefully all of the members, survive the winter. So she still has daughters that are going out and foraging for the hive, whereas the queen, her role is to stay in the hive and lay eggs. But so for bumblebees, though, the queen, especially early in the season, is still doing a lot of the foraging work in order to lay that first round of daughter eggs, get them developed, and then get them out foraging for the hive.
Wow. I really like the pictures you showed about the pumpkins and the squash, because you were the one that showed me about the squash bee, and it really does work. You open the little squash plant, and it's like, wow, that's so cool. What are some other things we can do to attract bees and support them in our yards, other than plant lots of zucchini and pumpkins?
Yeah, so having flowers available that are blooming throughout the entire season is definitely a thing that you want, because some bees are active different times of year than others. Oh, this is Mabel. So I have three cats, and they're all making an appearance today. Um, they're kind of freaking out about the sirens right now. Another thing that you can do is, and here's Weasley. Like, for real, guys. Um, so another thing you can do is making sure that you've got nesting habitat. So I leave like my milkweeds, my sunflowers, I leave pretty much all of my garden like up during the winter, especially the things I'll leave the things up that'll have hollow stems, because I don't know if a bee might have made her nest in those stems. And so I want to make sure to leave that out until really, about this time of the spring, or, a couple weeks ago would have been good too. Once you get above sort of 50 degrees, like average sort of consistently, the bees will be sort of emerging from those areas, and you can, I throw all of my stuff in the compost. So even if I threw it into the compost a little bit early, the bees would still come out. But if you, take your organic material to the dump or whatever, you don't want to do that too early for the bees. I saw sort of a little bit off frame a corner of a bee house. And so those are another thing that you can put out. So different species of bees will like different diameters of straws or stems. So, organic materials are sort of the best for those because you can, either sort of compost them after a year or two. Um, because plastic, you've got to make sure that you're sort of like sanitizing in between seasons because bees, much like people, can also get sick. Um, so and then for ground nesters, if you've got areas of bare soil, just kind of keep an eye on it and see what's using it. Because if you've got bees nesting in there, you want to just make sure that you're not disturbing that area because those nests will actually persist, over the winter, and then the new bees will emerge in the spring. So you want to make sure you leave those undisturbed. Also, having some sort of water source will be really helpful for the bees, as well as the birds and some other critters that are out there. Because things like bumblebees, they need to be able to make sort of that like mud to excavate for their hive and do those kinds of things. So having a water source, and honeybees, just need a drink sometimes. So if you've got a bird bath and you've noticed that, insects will sort of fall in and start to drown, throw some big rocks in there so that the bees have somewhere to climb to if they accidentally slip in. So that's another good way to kind of make sure that some of our nice like water features aren't death traps for bees.
Awesome. Wow, I've learned so much. This has been really fascinating. So I'm excited. Let me just bring the bee cam back real quick. Oops, I think the battery died on the bee
Oh
cam.
no.
Yeah. Oh well. But we will have you back for spiders, and I'm excited about that because you really helped me fall in love with little jumping spiders. I think those are probably the cutest. I think everybody loves jumping spiders when
Yes.
you get to see them because they've got the big eyes and they're furry.
And they're fuzzy.
So,
I mean, really, yeah, anything that's got that sort of like cute ratio and is fuzzy, those are our gateway spiders.
gateway spiders, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but if you have questions, go ahead and put them in, and Dr. Bachmann can come back and answer them later. So please feel free to continue this conversation. Thank you, Amanda, Dr. Bachmann, and everybody else. Stay safe, stay curious, go explore, and have a great day.